Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll hear a musical performance from the band Chrome. But first, joining me now is our guest, Matt Vollen. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. And you're a Fargo pastor and author. And thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, John.
You know, you're here to talk about your book, Sister Secrets, A Brother's Reveal. But before we get into that, let's find out a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself and maybe your background and where you're from.
I'm a native of the Fargo-Moorhead area, raised on a farm where I still live, 8 miles south of Moorhead. I went through Moorhead Public Schools. Curiously enough, I'm on the Moorhead School Board now, so they have the fox watch and the chicken coop. I went from Moorhead to a little college in Minneapolis called Golden Valley Lutheran, and then to Concordia College in Moorhead, where I studied political science and history, because I just simply wanted to be a public servant and a farmer. And met my wife in college, and we got married and went out west and were ski patrols and ski instructors for about 4 years, and then came back to farm and built a home, and everything was going well. And the 80s hit, and we ran out of money, and our first daughter died and went through a real difficult crisis. And through that, ended up beginning in ministry, first in youth ministry, then as campus chaplain at Oak Grove Lutheran High School, and then went to seminary. And that was 25 years ago, and here I am.
Wow. Well, so where are you pastor right now?
At Messiah Evangelical Lutheran Church, right across from the VA up in North Fargo.
Okay. Now, you're here to talk about your book, so tell us about the book and tell us what it's about.
In 2005, my middle sister, Elizabeth Ann, was killed in a car accident. And that began a series of events in our family as we coped with that tragedy. My son was in the car, her 2 children, and my youngest sister, our baby sister Cordy, lived out in Pennsylvania, and she spun out of control almost immediately. And a year later, almost to the day, our dear little sister Cordy, whom I've always said is the one that really should have been the pastor in the family, and a pastor's heart, just a wonderful, wonderful woman. She was homecoming queen at Moorhead High. She woke up one morning and by the end of the day had shot and killed her husband with a shotgun. And it just blew us all away along with him. And I just needed to understand how she could do that, how this wonderful woman and mother and daughter, godmother, my sister, could do that. So the book was a journey.
Mm. And we're going to get more into that, but can you tell us a little bit about growing up, you know, you and your sisters and the things that were going on in your lives and how this sort of impacted your adult lives? You talked a little bit about the farm.
Right. One, I talked about how, or I write about how when we were kids, we lived in a time of probably silence. The kids were to be seen and not heard, and you didn't really talk about the things that scared you. There was a little bit of denial. For instance, I remember a time on the bus. So I grew up in a family with 3 girls, 3 sisters, and myself. And one time I was riding home from school in the bus, sitting in the back with a couple of my neighbor friends, and we got in a little argument over the merits of Chevys and Fords, and I was kind of winning on the Chevy side. And then one of the kids looked at me and said, well, yeah, you know, your sister Kit is really not your sister. She's just your half sister. And I said, no. And well, yeah, why don't you just ask your parents? So we got home at dinner, and of course, about halfway into dinner, I looked at Mom and Papa and said, the kids on the bus said that Kit's not my real sister. She's my half sister. Is that true? And there was this silence. And that just tells you a little bit about what things were like. Great parents, wonderful parents, but a lot of things that you didn't talk about. And so in that atmosphere, how we grew up, I learned later that the little girls had been abused. and didn't tell anybody that except each other for 40 some years. So I think that defines a little bit about what was going on. And I've always said, had we have known that, maybe some proactive measures could have been taken to maybe alleviate some of the struggles they went through.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're sitting here talking about it, and maybe a little bit more. Can you talk about each sister sort of individually and your relationship with them, and a little more on that?
My sister Kit was my half sister, my mother's child from another marriage. She was about 6 years older, and she ended up leaving for Colorado to college and ultimately to Haight-Ashbury, and ended up in that 60s hippie movement, and pretty much thought she was out of our lives, but came home and became involved in a cult called the Way International, which ultimately impacted our youngest sister Cordy and a number of girls in the Red River Valley in a very negative way. It was a cult that pulled them away from their families and kind of isolated them. And so my sister Cordy, the baby sister, the sister who killed her husband, was probably the most negatively impacted by that. And not only did it involve some really wacko theology, but it involved introduction to drugs and just a number of bad things. Liz, our middle sister, the one who was killed in the car accident that kind of all of this kind of emerged from, was kind of the tomboy sister, and just a lot of fun, a great athlete, herself a campus queen up at the University of Crookston, went on to be a nurse, but she was the one that experienced the abuse early, and it was through that situation that her and Cordy became just bonded by that secret that no one else knew about, and that secret was the abuse of by a hired man.
How do you feel like you came out of the situation a little more maybe unscathed or successful, if that's the word I can use, and they didn't?
Well, probably the abuse. So they were just little girls. My mother had to run an errand and asked if the hired man could just simply stay in the house in case anything happened. And what happened is while she was gone, he crept up the stairs to their room, and Cordy, my youngest sister, who at that time was probably 4, was closest to the entrance to the bedroom, and he reached for her in the area of her panties, and Liz awakened during this time. So Liz is probably 6, and isn't startled but is scared, but literally rolls over on top of Cordy, and takes the vaginal abuse that Cordy would have taken. It happened. They pretended they were asleep. He left, and nobody knew about that for 40 years. But that hired man stayed, took meals at our home, all 3 meals, probably for the next 5-6 years. So they had to endure that presence with all of us backslapping and being friends of this guy because we didn't know. So had that have happened to me, and had I have had to have lived with that monster in our house, you know, who knows what would have happened. But I think that what that did is it kind of set the stage with how we as a family dealt with some mental illness that Cordy had and some of the struggles that Liz had throughout her life as a direct result of this.
Well, could you read just a short passage maybe from your book right now?
Certainly. So at the end, I have a quote, as I do at the beginning of each chapter, but this is the afterword, and it's written by Frederick Buechner, who himself is a survivor, a great writer, and theologian whose father committed suicide when he was very young. And here's what he wrote in Beyond Words. Here in the world, beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid. Frederick Buechner was a survivor because he faced that tragedy and he spoke about it and he shined light on the situation. And that was my hope for this book. I sign most of my books with Veritas Lux, Truth and Light. And it's my belief that if the truth is known, light can come into a dark situation and healing can begin. And so I begin with this terrible thing that happened as a result of a whole lifetime of these struggles. And I begin at the outset with Ernest Hemingway's Death in the Afternoon. All stories, if continued far enough, end in death. And he is no true storyteller who would keep that from you. July 22nd, 2006, almost 1 year to the day when my sister Elizabeth was killed in a car crash. Cordy walked slowly yet deliberately through the house and out the kitchen door to the sidewalk which led to the gravel driveway. She released the lever on the shotgun and the barrel arched up and away from the trigger mechanism. Her hands, shaking a bit, reached for the shell which she carefully inserted into the chamber. After she snapped the barrel back in place, she aimed the shotgun to the sky and fired the round. The blast and the kick left her breathless. The explosive power of the weapon stunned her. She paused, bent down, picked up the spent shell casing, and placed it in her pocket. With a live round in her hand, she walked robotically into her house, sat down at the kitchen table with the shotgun in her hands, and waited. This is our baby sister who had never loaded or fired a shotgun in her life. My sister Liz loved to hunt, had guns. My sister Kit hunted, I hunted. We grew up with guns, but Cordy hadn't. But somehow this amazing woman who had had a couple of long-term hospitalizations in her early 20s for bipolar issues, was able to walk into a gun store in Pennsylvania where she lived, a small gun store, and buy a shotgun under the guise that she was just going to hunt some rabbits. But yet, she never knew the explosive power. I don't think she had a clue what that gun could do.
Mm. So what's been the reaction to the book so far from your sisters and your family?
My family generally, I think, says it's really family business that should stay family business. A few have come forward and said, you know, it will do a lot of good and the story needs to be told. But it's even though there's a lot of hope in the book, it is such a painful book that it's so difficult to read, particularly family members. The children of Liz and Cordy, it's a story about how their mother died in a car accident and how their father was killed. It's hard.
It's got to be very hard. Can you talk about the moment you learned your sister had committed murder?
Was driving back from a horse show with our youngest son, and my wife was with me, and the cell phone rang, and I pick it up, and it was my dad, who was very ill at the time, and had fallen extremely ill since his daughter Liz had died in the car accident. He'd really had fallen apart. He loved her so, and he said, Matt, Cordy just shot Steve, and he's dead. I need you here. I need you to somehow help me. And I was convinced that what happened is Steve was a big man and psychologically abusive, not physically abusive, but I was convinced they'd gotten in a fight and that he was going to try to kill her, and somehow in the mess of it all, he was killed. But I had a friend who was a lieutenant in the Moorhead Police Department. I called him. I said, you got to call Fergus Falls. I need to know what happened here. 5 minutes later, he called me back and he said, Matt, it was her. She pulled the trigger. She killed him. I was just astounded.
You know, why do you think there's sort of still a stigma maybe on mental illness and seeking treatment?
I know my dad always used to say, I wish Cordy would have a bandage around her head sometimes, because if we're on crutches or if we've got a sling, everybody cares for us and they worry about us. But when we hurt inside, nobody sees that. But I think on the other side that we somehow we don't see it as what it is. It's an illness that many people have, and we just don't. I don't think we acknowledge it. I don't understand why, but somehow it's just like we're not complete. I don't believe that. I believe it's just something that happens. But
you've told us a little bit about how your family reacted to the book, but you know, what are you hearing from readers and what I'd call the public out there who are reading this, who maybe didn't know anything about your family or didn't know about these stories?
Many people who have read it find themselves recalling an abuse that happened to them or a family member that they've been aware of, or even having their memory triggered by an abuse that they had forgotten about. And by and large, when I do the readings across the state of Minnesota and North Dakota, people come forward and they say, "Thank you for bringing this up, for shining light on the situation," and even though it's a horrifying story, many of those people can see the hope in it.
Do you have one more short passage you might read for us?
I do. It talks a bit about that hope. We will remember those whom we have loved and lost. We will remain thankful for what was and dream of what might have been. We will ask God to bless the good memories and heal the painful ones. We will cling to hope and love, because in the end, hope and love are all that we have. Well, this is a story of the secrets my sisters endured. It's also a story of my revealing those secrets and what the telling has revealed in me. Perhaps it's also a reminder of secrets that remain in all of us. Secrets which, if not shared, will go with us to our graves, impacting our behavior until we breathe our last breath. Although I was not visited with the disease my sisters shared, I endured my share of grief and abuse. What was different? Why did I survive the darkness and hopelessness I encountered along the way? Will I survive the inevitable crises which I know await me, the secrets yet unrevealed? I hope so. However, as this story reveals, life is not predictable or fair.
So what do you hope people take away from reading this book?
I hope that people would honestly look at their lives, not be embarrassed at what has happened, but acknowledge it, get the help that they need, and find people to help them walk this honest walk, a journey in life.
Well, Matt, I'm sorry we're out of time. It's got to be a hard book to write. I hope people do read it and understand what message you're trying to convey there. If people want a copy, where can they go?
NDSU Press has copies, as does Zambros, Melberg's in Moorhead, and Amazon.
All right. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stay tuned for more. The band Chrome consists of cousins who love performing almost every genre of music, from rock, blues, folk, and much more. Over the last 20 years, their original music has addressed everyday life issues.
I'm living here with only you and God to fear. I'm living life along the road, leaving things behind, and no one drinks the water and wine
stop, you need to think. Even when you've had way too much to drink, and every day I'm feeling so tired, and my life, it's passing me by. The weatherman talks about change, and I can't even get her to remember my name. And every day I'm feeling so low, and my life, it's passing me by. But you need to stop for a while and just talk for a while, 'cause my mind's not yet made. Need to stop for a drink and take some time and think, 'cause feelings tend to change. This road is heading somewhere, and where it goes, I guess I don't even care. Thought I'd fallen in love, and my life had just begun. But you need to stop for a while and just talk for a while, 'cause my mind's not yet made. I need to stop for a drink and take some time to think, 'cause feelings tend to change. Feelings tend to change. Feelings tend to change.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funding for Minnesota Legacy programs are provided by a grant from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, and by the members of Prairie Public.